Right, from the gathering of liberation movements, let's tend to this now. The Black Entrepreneurs Alliance has come out strongly against calls by political economist Moeletsi Mbeki for government to repeal black economic empowerment policies and a 50% cut in civil service. Mbeki, who chairs the South African Institute of International Affairs, says that according to a study by the International Monetary Fund, public service salaries consume a large percentage of the country's gross domestic product. I'm joined now by the CEO of the Black Entrepreneurs Alliance, Refilwe, Monageng. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. So it was another gathering of sort, like we always have, including the summit that is taking place. But this particular one said we are gathering to meet and discuss this challenge of a lack of inclusive economic growth. So I suppose he comes in the auspices of being a political economist, and he is weighing in. And this is the diagnosis that he gives. He says South Africa's biggest problem in terms of growth is economic stagnation. Is that correct?
It is correct, and also economic inclusion.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our people are economic spectators, whereby if you look at the tender opportunities for entrepreneurs, you look at even the lotto. Let's make an example about the lotto.
Yeah.
The fact that so much money goes to just one bad company. But think about it this way. If the very tender of the lotto was aggregated, meaning you would have key companies that run the lotto in Limpopo, in Gauteng, in Mpumalanga, and so on. And then other ones that are subcontracting in terms of maintenance and stuff like that. Yeah. Then you involve more entrepreneurs. One, to have experience in running such a project, also being exposed to such amounts of money and being able to be inclusive and participate and ensure that we bridge the gap between the first and the second economy.
That's where you part, I suppose. That's where you part, where he says the way to deal with this is not black economic empowerment. The way to deal with this is to do away with that, because black economic empowerment, he says, all it does, it discourages entrepreneurs like yourselves from being creative and coming up with innovation. Instead, you just become government employees, so you wait for the tender.
It's not true. And why black economic empowerment policies, they need to be reviewed and aggressively implemented. It's the implementation, it's the problem, not the policies. And why? It's important. People will say, let's not talk about the history, but history is important. It teaches us how white people were intentionally set up for success. And when you intentionally put policies that advance interests of your people. The president spoke about something in Parliament, about the Carnegie report that was drafted in 1932. That the question was asked to say, what is to be done with the problem of white poverty? And the question we should ask ourselves, I mean, there's an organization in Soweto called Soweto Network. Right. They're currently discussing an issue called what is to be done with the poverty and economic inequalities and exclusions that is currently happening. Yeah. And they're currently running their own consultative dialogue to say how to ensure that these policies are aggressively implemented, because they give a wrong narrative that BEA is very bad. And the very Moeletsi Mbeki, he's not being truthful in that he's a beneficiary of the very laws. Yeah. So how do you create that which you've benefited? You look at his age. He's got nothing to lose. He has benefited. And young people, as the president has rightfully said, young people led the struggles. Yeah. And young people whom are members of Black Entrepreneurs Alliance, you'd find others whom are members of Dudula. You might not like Dudula for whatever reason that you might not. But it's the very frustrations, as you've rightfully heard. The president is saying it's out of those frustrations that people would find outlets. So Soweto Network, Dudula, Black Entrepreneurs Alliance, they come together and say, what is to be done? Which the ANC had long time discussed when they were in exile. And it's these things that we are saying, black economic empowerment must stay. Yeah. And when it stays, they must also fast-track implementation of the Public Procurement Act. Yeah. If you look at the
spread the cake a little bit more.
Absolutely,
this
because
cake amongst a lot more
within the policy of, and we should be unapologetic about that. Through the Carnegie summit or conference, it was realized that this is to be done to advance white people. And today are beneficiaries of that, and that's why we have white privilege. And we are saying the same system, albeit it should be in line with the Constitution, to say how do we equitably, and I'm using the word equitably, you look at like getting a banking license. Then, when white people wanted banking license, to get a banking license was 250,000 rands. Now, if you want to have a banking license, you need to have 250 million. And it doesn't make sense that 92.7% of the population, majority being Indians, coloureds, and black people, are the ones in the majority. But you're saying get rid of policies that advance the majority at the expense of the minority. It can't be. Yeah. And so we are advancing and saying, Mr. Mbeki, we appreciate what you're saying. We appreciate the institution you represent. But in this instance, you're incorrect.
So what about the comparison that he draws between South Africa and the US, saying we are now 15 times behind comparing to the United States, because what those economies did very earlier on was invest in human capital and innovation. So instead of taking our minerals and shipping them out of the country, we should be developing the human capital and skills of our young people to work those minerals.
So I'll tell you something. People usually say, no, we need foreigners to learn something. So if you read Phakamisa Mzimela's book, Native Merchants. At BEA, we love it. We use this as a Bible because it tells you before colonization, black people were running the mines, beneficiation. If you look at the Mining Charter and the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act, it speaks about beneficiating of minerals. Again, implementation. We have laws that are good. They are not implemented. Now, I'll take you back to say, during that pre-colonial times, long before white people were here, there was iron ore, manganese, and people were making assegai. To make assegai, you need to get the rock, really mine it. And once you mine it, beneficiate it to make it sure it's like an arm, an assegai. So it needs skills to do that. We had that skills. Now, history has been written and miswritten so that it discredits entrepreneurship and innovation of black people. That's that. Now, with the laws superimposed and reflecting on the past, it means we can still advance black people. So on account of the preferential procurement policy framework, which agribusiness has taken to court, we are saying government must be unapologetic and say you are a minority. At the expense of 92.7% of the population, we must now, we're not saying we shouldn't listen to them. It's important to listen to them, but still advance the majority, because they say majority rules. If black people are the majority and they are in poverty, it's important to consider them and come up with mechanisms to set them up for success through policies. And that's why this dialogue that the president and through the foundations of the elders, they are putting together, we are submitting and say the first thing that needs to be done, it's criminalize racial profiling. The fact that you and I, when we apply for credit, for insurance at the banks, the fact that you're black, your insurance premium and medical aid is expensive. Secondly, we need credit amnesty. A lot of black people are blacklisted, especially entrepreneurs. They can't get equitable access to finance. Even if you go to the IDC and so on, because they use the same barometer to be able to judge you, to say, okay, are you credit worthy and stuff like that. And considering that we have black tax, I need to take care of my younger brother, my cousins, and so on. So we factor those things as you advance to say what is to be done to empower black people. Thirdly, let's aggregate opportunities. We can't have a situation like the Southern Farms on the south of El Dorado Park. You have one company that has won a tender for 27 billion rand, just one company. And we're saying through that, you can aggregate it and say, we appreciate you got 27 billion rand, carve out through, and it's in the law. The Public Procurement Act says there's something called set aside. You set aside 10% of it, which is 2.7 billion, and say we'll aggregate it. There'll be people that be installing handles, pipes, doors, windows, tiles, painting. You aggregate it so that people are included into the economy. By the way, Thabo, that was done. Between 2008 and 2012, JRA had an opportunity called Josie at Work. Some of our members benefited from them when Orange Farm was developed. So we are saying it's nothing new. It's just implementation. And the very civil servants that Moeletsi Mbeki is saying that they must be cut into half. Imagine the impact of cutting 50% of civil servants that are currently benefiting from medical aid, ensuring that they can buy houses, they can actively participate in the economy. So you also think about the impact. And the fact that this study is funded by who? We should question at whose interest that this has been funded. But we also look at the Carnegie report that was done in 1984, which says what is to be done with regards to the poverty of Indians, black people, and white people. And in that context, no, coloreds, it was coloreds, blacks, and whites. Indians were not included there, and you should ask why. But also, it was never implemented. Mamphela Ramphele happened to be the part of the people that were drafting that 1984 Carnegie report about the poverty of black people in rural areas and in townships. And then lastly, we'll submit and say through this National Convention that's happening in August. One of the things that also needs to be done is the National Township Economic Development Act. Currently, we only have the Gauteng. Yeah. What about townships in Khayelitsha, in Tzaneen? People should consider that. But we are also saying the municipal. It should be the Municipal Township Economic Development Act. Why Municipal Township Economic Development Act?
The argument that, that you're just draining the GDP by one, public sector salaries, but two, even the SOEs themselves, if you add them, it takes it to 17% of the GDP being spent.
So, I'll tell you something. Do you know that poverty and this exclusion, it's political and systematic? You see, you'll show me one side of the picture to say, yeah, but if the fact that there's a lot of state employees, the state is bloated. No. Because you're giving me that picture. Give me an alternative picture. If private sector sitting on the money they're sitting on the JSE, you look at the Public Investment Corporation Act, PIC Act Section 2, it says you must invest in black companies, but majority of investment go to JSE listed companies. So there's a lot of value that can be unlocked to ensure that you empower black people. We need leaders that are intentional in empowering black entrepreneurs to say that they should be included into the economy.
That's the CEO of the Black Alliance, or Black Entrepreneurs Alliance, Refilwe Monageng. They're rebutting that statement made by Moeletsi Mbeki. He was speaking at a gathering which was hosted by the FW de Klerk Foundation, and they were discussing inclusive economic growth.